Guys, in this video, I'm talking about the Blue Swallow Motel. And, you know, I always forget something, but I always say bye and it's never the end. I'm going to attach some pictures of it that my sister took for me. So, wait till you see all the pictures. This little Blue Swallow Motel is so old-fashioned. It's always been pink stucco with a seashell design in the stucco. Why seashells in the desert part of New Mexico? I don't know, but it's always been pink stucco. It's a cute little place, but you know, I just always thought, oh, that's that old place down the street from us. I didn't know it was famous. Okay, guys, wait for the pictures at the end. See ya. Hi guys, it's Carol and Toby. It's nap time for Toby, but I wanted him to get in this picture. Welcome to Plain Vanilla Grandma. It's Carol. How are ya? I'm doing pretty good. Today's video, I want to tell you about why I love jewel tone color smudge. You know, like that green bowl I showed you yesterday? I love jewel tones. Emerald, ruby, sapphire, amethyst, whatever's pink. Anyway, jewel tone colors are my favorite. And not too long I realized why. I grew up in this little town called Tucumcari in New Mexico on Route 66. Now, when I was growing up, I never went anywhere. I never left Tucumcari. So I didn't know that every town didn't have a big stretch of businesses with neon lights. I thought everybody had that. And the neon lights in the dark are just gorgeous. That's why I love those colors, I'm sure. And I never knew living on Route 66 was a big deal. I mean, I did not know Route 66 was a big deal until I was way grown up. But anyway, when I was growing up, there wasn't much to do in that little town. There was about 8,000 people, and there was a bowling alley, and there was a movie theater, but who had money for stuff like that? What all the high school kids did is we would drag the highway. At one end was Lotta Burger Drive-In. They make the best hamburgers, or they did at that time, and blueberry shakes and french fries. I never got those until I was an adult, but anyway, we would go from Lotta Burger down to the other end of Route 66 in our town. It's about 2 miles long stretch inside the city limits. And at the other end was an A&W root beer and a Westerner drive-in where we would go get a cherry limeade. Now these were paper cups with paper straws and probably 8 ounces. And we thought that was a big deal to get a Coke or a cherry limeade in these cups. You know, now 8 ounces to me is just, that's one good drink. But anyway, that was a big deal back then. And we would drag the highway in our cars and honk at our friends and wave. And that's just what you did in the evening on the weekend in Tucumcari. I was allowed to drive my dad's car. This is the honest truth. I thought the gas gauge was broken, because every week I'd put in $1 worth of gas. Back then, that was probably 3 gallons. And that's what I would use to drive that car to school and drag the highway with every week. The needle never moved off E all through my high school years. And then, when I got married, we were going to take that car to take my belongings to Amarillo, where I was going to live, about 110 miles. And so we filled it up. The needle moved. The gas gauge was not broken. I was just driving on fumes for years. But anyway, that's what we'd do. We'd drag the highway, Route 66, and the neon colors in the dark were just gorgeous. On Route 66, through that 2 mile stretch, there were motels and restaurants and curio shops that all had neon signs. And they didn't flash or do anything like that. They were just stationary colors. And in the dark, they were gorgeous. Well, anyway, not too far from where I live, not that many blocks, there was a little motor court on Route 66. Now, when I was in high school, I would think, who on earth would want to stay in that little old motor court motel when we have Holiday Inn and Ramada Inn? We have modern things. This is an old-fashioned little bitty place. Well, later I discovered it's an icon. It's called the Blue Swallow Motel now. It was built in 1939. A man named W.A. Huggins was a carpenter. He bought about half a block of property, and he built what he called a motor court. It consisted of rooms to rent with an attached garage, and there were 10 of them in an L shape. At some point down the road, somebody added 2 more garages and rooms. But anyway, it started off with 10, and then in the middle he built a home where he lived, and that was the office, and there was also a cafe. By the time I was born, the cafe was gone. I don't even know where it was or what it looked like, but it was gone by the time I was born in 1954. Anyway, W.A. Huggins owned it from 39. It started operation in 1940, and I think they sold it in 1941, I believe, to a man named Ted Jones and his wife Marjorie, and they ran it for several years. Then they sold it to a man named Floyd Redmond. Floyd was engaged. He bought the motel and the motor court. That's what it was called then, motor court. He bought it for his wife to be Lillian as an engagement present. Honestly, can you imagine somebody saying, will you marry me? Here's you a motel. You can clean 10 bathrooms every day. But evidently she loved it. That was her different times. Lillian ran that little place for 40 years. When she and her husband bought it, they changed the name to Blue Swallow Motel because motel was a term that had just become popular. And they added the big neon sign with this beautiful blue swallow on it. And they did some other upgrading. Ran it for 40 years. I used to walk down the highway, drive past it all the time. You could see her sitting in there at the desk. I had no idea Lillian Redmond was a somebody and that I should have gone in there and talked to her because she would have been a wealth of historical information. To me, that was just this little antique, old little motel in our town. Not that many blocks from me. And it was always upkept very nicely. It wasn't, you know, an old dumpy place. It was a nice place, but it was no Ramada Inn. Well, Lillian ran it for 40 years, sold it the year before she passed away to a couple, Dale and Hilda Baki, I think their last name was. Anyway, they were from Colorado. He was an electrician. They bought it, and he updated all the electrical on it. And then they did the coolest thing. They installed an actual 1939 rotary dial telephone in every one of the rooms. I would love to go stay there just to dial that phone. I grew up with the rotary phone, and I loved the sound it made when you stuck your finger in the hole and did the rotary dial to put in your numbers. I loved that sound. I want to go hear it again. But anyway, they owned it for several years and ran it. It's always been a mom and pop operation. It's never been owned by a corporation or anything. It's always been mom and pop that lived there and run it. Then they sold it to the Muellers. I forgot their names, but it consisted of a mom and dad and their adult son Cameron and his wife Jessica. They owned it, I think, for 9 years. Anyway, they did massive upkeep on it because right now this little Blue Swallow Motel is 81 years old. He had retired from some job back east, and they bought the Blue Swallow and came here to for their retirement. And he finally decided he wanted to actually retire. Cameron and Jessica did not want to continue running the motel. They had had a baby, and she wanted to move back east where her family was. And so they put it up for sale, I think in the fall of 2018. The asking price was $1.2 million. When my sister still lives in Tucumcari. I live in Amarillo, 110 miles away. When I heard they wanted $1.2 million for that little old-fashioned place, I called my sister and I said, who on earth would pay $1.2 million for that little bitty business? Well, they sold it. They just finalized the sale in June of this year. They just announced it. It was at the end of June. They didn't disclose the selling price, but I gather they got at least $1 million for it. The new owners, I don't know their name, I've forgotten, are from back east somewhere. And they are currently driving the Route 66 route. And then when they get to California, they'll turn around and come back and take over operation of it. If you don't know, Route 66 is America. It was the first highway to go across the country, I believe. It starts in Chicago and goes across to, I think, Laguna Beach, California. It stops there. Anyway, it was the first highway where you could drive across the country. There used to be a Doris Day show, and it was sponsored by Chevrolet, and she would sing a song called "See the USA" in a Chevrolet and drive along Route 66. Well, anyway, I always grew up on Route 66. I still live on Route 66. I didn't know what a big deal it was, Route 66, until I was way an adult. Anyway, I so wish I had ever stopped in there and talked to Lillian. I am sure she would have loved to have anybody be interested in and would talk to us. It's been upgraded. The Muellers installed tankless water heaters and excellent mattresses and plush towels and a charging unit in each garage for electric cars. Did all kinds of upgrades like that, but it has always been kept historically accurate with vintage furniture from the 40s and the 50s and Chanel bedspreads and things like that. The couple before the Muellers, I believe, put in carpeting over the wood floors. I think it was them. But basically, it has been kept in the same condition, historically correct, same period furniture, and it's on the National Register for Historic Places, and New Mexico has something similar called New Mexico Register for Historical Cultural Places, something like that. Anyway, it is an icon, and I lived right down the street from it and never even knew. You know how I knew it was really an icon? Not that many years ago, since the internet's been invented, I was searching online for some things to make a fairy garden. I discovered you can buy a miniature Blue Swallow Motel fairy garden set. And I called my sister and I said, is that wild? That is just blew my mind that you could buy the Blue Swallow Motel fairy garden set. And she told me, yes, it's a famous place. I thought it was just that little old place with the older woman sitting at the counter that we saw all the time. That Pixar movie Cars, the Cozy Cone is based on the Blue Swallow. Blue Swallow is famous for having the sign next to the Blue Swallow that says 100% refrigerated air. And Cozy Cone has that sign in that movie. I would so wish that she had not passed away. I think she passed away in 1999. I would go talk to that woman. All the history she must have lived through. I remember Paul McCartney and his wife did the Route 66 drive in an older Jeep, and they spent the night there. it is just, that's the thing to do now. Drive Route 66 and stay at the Blue Swallow. Smithsonian, I've got some notes, wait a second. Smithsonian Magazine said, it is the last, best, and friendliest of the old-time motels. Smithsonian Magazine knows there's a Blue Swallow. Just blows my mind. Lillian evidently was quite a lady. She came to New Mexico in 1915 in a covered wagon. She later became a Harvey girl. If you guys don't know about Harvey girls, tell me, and I'll do a video about Harvey girls. Anyway, that's what I know about the Blue Swallow and my little stretch of Route 66 through Tucumcari. I'm going to go now, guys. Thank you so much for putting up with me. If you like hearing my stories, give me a thumbs up. And I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's my daughter's birthday. I'm going to try that lemon curd again. This is the last time. If I make a mess, this is it. And I'm going to make that lemon cake for her birthday. So I'll do a video about that. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.